Yes. Good morning and welcome to this March 15th meeting of the Board of Directors of the SBCAG. And Ms. Contreras, would you call the roll, please?
Directors Williams?
Here.
Wolf? Adam? Levanino? Richardson?
Here.
Lizaldi?
Here.
Mosby? Bennett?
Here.
Clark?
Here.
Murillo?
Here.
Waterfield? Here. Andrezek?
Here.
And Chair Hartman.
I'm here and Director Mosby just came in.
Oh, perfect.
All right, please stand for the pledge. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now is the time for the public to comment on any item that is not on today's agenda but within SBCAG's jurisdiction. Do we have any public comment forms submitted, Ms. Contreras?
We have no public comment.
Okay, moving to the consent calendar, there are two items we need to pull. We need to pull item D for potential conflict of interest for Director Williams, and then item G that to be read into the record. Are there any other items in the consent agenda? Do we?
Item A for approval of minutes, I'm just going to abstain since I was in here.
Okay, so I guess we'll vote on the minutes then separately. And
I'll move the balance of the agenda.
Could you hold off on
Sure.
that, because I'd like to include G in the balance if we could. All right, so item A, would you read that into the record?
4A, approval of minutes. Approve minutes from the February 15th, 2018 Board of Directors meeting.
All right, and a motion for approval?
Move approval of the minutes, Madam Chair.
And a second? And would you call the roll, Ms. Contreras?
Directors Williams,
Aye.
Richardson, Lizaldi,
Aye.
Mosby, Bennett,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Murillo,
Aye.
Waterfield,
Abstain.
Andrezek,
Abstain.
and Chair Hartman.
Aye.
Motion passes 802.
Okay, and would you read item D into the record? And I guess Director Williams has to leave.
Item 4D, outside counsel contract amendment. Approve and authorize the chair to sign a second amendment to the agreement for professional service with Remy Moose Manley LLC for litigation services for the term of February 16th, 2017 to June 30th, 2018, to increase the agreement amount by $60,000 for a revised total amount not to exceed $150,000.
Thank you. May I have a motion?
Second.
Any further discussion? Again, would you call the vote?
Directors Richardson, Lizaldi, Mosby,
Aye.
Bennett,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Murillo,
Aye.
Waterfield,
Aye.
Andrezek,
Aye.
and Chair Hartman.
Aye.
Motion passes 9-0.
Ms. Contreras, we don't have any speaker slips pulling any items. I just wanted to clarify that again.
No, we have no speakers.
Okay. Moving to item G. Ms. McKenzie, would you read it into the record? Ms. Contreras and then Ms. McKenzie.
4G, employment agreement for executive director. Approve and authorize the chair to execute the agreement of employment for Marjorie C. Kern to serve as executive director of the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments with a term of March 15, 2018 to March 15, 2022, with a base salary of $173,532.32 plus benefits and allowances.
Madam Chair and Directors, effective January 1st, 2017, the Brown Act was amended and the Government Code Section 54953, Subdivision C3, now requires that prior to taking final action in an open meeting, that the legislative body verbally report a summary on the recommended salary, benefits, and package of a local agency executive. I'd like the record to reflect reading the item into the record constitutes the required report under Government Code Section 54953.
Thank you. And we can just bring this into the approval of the balance of the agenda unless there's any further discussion here. All
I'll
right.
move the balance of the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, and once again, would you call the vote, Ms. Contreras?
Directors Williams,
Aye.
Richardson, Lizaldi, Mosby, Bennett,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Murillo,
Aye.
Waterfield, Andrezek,
Aye.
and Chair Hartman.
Aye.
Motion passes 10-0.
Okay, so then moving on to our departmental agenda and item number 5.
Yes, Madam Chairperson, members of the board.
But we first
I'm
need to
sorry,
have it read
sorry.
into the record. I'm not the only one who makes
I do
that
too,
rush.
yeah, yeah.
Item 5, fiscal year 2018-19 overall work program and budget. Review and comment on the draft fiscal year 2018-19 overall work program and budget.
Okay, now I get to go. Madam Chairperson, members of the board, this is our annual overall work program and budget presentation. This is the information only at this time, just give you an opportunity to ask any questions or whatnot. At your next meeting, I'd like to put this on your agenda for action. So if you have any issues or concerns, if you want to have me come and meet with you, I'd be happy to do that. But this is your overview of the budget as we see as it stands today. Thank you for the presentation. This is just a recap of why we exist and what we strive to achieve each and every year with our overall work program and budget. And I think this proposed draft does all these things. So we'll move on. I just want to do a recap of what's going on this current fiscal year. We've had a lot of successes so far. We adopted our regional transportation plan, and we've received official approval from the Air Resources Board just recently, actually, on our sustainable community strategy. So basically, we are in compliance with AB 375, and we are good to go on being eligible for all future funding. There's some proposals that you have to have an approved SCS to be eligible for SB1 funding, and we are in compliance of that. I'm really proud of the implementation of peak hour rail. There should be peak hour rail on there. I think I'll correct that before that's posted on the website. But the implementation of peak hour rail is scheduled to start April 2nd. We had a meeting this past Tuesday to talk to the employers to encourage their employees to take rail. And I think that was very well received, and so I think we're going to have a lot of people taking rail starting April 2nd. We were also successful in submitting a joint application with Caltrans for the Sustainable Community Strategy grant funding opportunities, specifically the congestion solutions. Solutions for Congested Corridors application. We're asking for over $180 million from the state to support that project, and having a joint application just makes our application that much more important and significant, and hopefully we'll hear some good news next month on that application. We also assisted the local agencies in applying for SB1 funding and doing all the reporting that's required for this. This is all new to all of us, so we're all in the same boat, and we want to continue to do that as we move forward. And last but not least, this past January, we also assumed the operations and management of the Clean Air Express service, and that's been going fairly well, and we look to continue that management into the future, and it's included in this overall work program and budget, as you will see. So why do we do this every year? The reason is because we have to. This is a requirement. The overall work program is a requirement to get our state and federal resources for planning. There are no local funds from the local jurisdictions, such as dues, included in this overall work program and budget. It's all state and federal resources, as well as Measure A and SAFE and other funding sources, but the local jurisdictions do not contribute monetarily to this program. And we also use this as a management tool to basically outline what we intend to do in the next fiscal year, what the tasks are, what our direct costs are, and when we intend to go out to bid on consultant services and what have you. So it serves dual purpose, and so we continue to do this. Moving on. So these are our priorities for this overall work program. Basically continuing what we've been doing for this past year, applying for funding any chance we get, implementing our projects as they get funded, managing the services, the Clean Air Express specifically, promoting the train as an option for commuting, completing the 246. Actually, that should happen this fiscal year, but it's still included in next year's budget because we have to finalize some billings and whatnot. So we should have a ribbon cutting on that this spring. We are also proposing updating our implementation plan for Measure A. Now with SB1 in the mix, we can look at what's next. And so we're planning on kicking that off late in this fiscal year, starting in force in next fiscal year. So you'll see a concept report of that activity fairly quickly in the next couple months. We are also proposing a call for projects for our South Coast Safe Routes to Schools and Bike and Pedestrian program. So you'll see that through your agendas, probably in the fall timeframe. And we're also proposing preparing our regional growth forecast. This is the foundation for our RHNA, Regional Housing Needs Assessment process. So we project how much growth we're going to have in the region, and then the next step in a few years we'll have to decide how we're going to accommodate the housing needs in our area. And last but not least, we plan on completing the airport land use plan this fiscal year, or the upcoming fiscal year. So this is a summary of our budgets. The state and federal local funds is basically SB CAG's general fund. It's basically what pays for the majority of our staff and consultant services to do the core work elements that we have that we're required by law to do. The other budgets, the SAFE, Traffic Solutions, Clean Air Express, and the Measure A program are standalone budgets. So overall, we have a $26 million budget with all those various programs. I want to point out of that $6 million of our general fund budget, half of those are discretionary grants that we were able to accomplish and receive. So we continue to aggressively apply for outside funding sources to meet our needs and do the things we want to do, and I think this is a reflection of how successful we've been. The total revenues out of that $6 million is mostly state and federal resources. So the local sales tax is your Measure A program and other funding sources that are non-transportation related, transportation planning related. And here's our general fund expenses. Out of that $6 million, only $2 million of that is staff, or 2.6 of it if you include the benefits. And the rest is professional services that we contract out outside our agency for support services and implementing specific projects, as you see listed here. So overall, for our staff and benefits, our salaries and benefits, we have 20 full-time equivalent positions. Actually, some of those are vacant at this point in time, and we're working on possibly filling one of those. But I'm not proposing any increase in staff in this upcoming year. It does include the cost of living increase adjustment based on the CPI index, which I think in the previous years the board has directed us to do that to maintain competition or to be competitive with other agencies in the area and beyond. And also it includes a cash benefit for benefits of increasing to $50, which was included in a resolution that was approved by this board, I think two or 3 years ago. So overall, I just want to point out in the bottom little table there, we don't have that big of an increase in our salaries and benefits compared to the current fiscal year. I think it's a 1% increase over our estimates of where we'll end up at the end of June. Thank you. So I think we are a very lean, mean, small agency that does big things. So this is our SAFE budget. The SAFE budget is the dollar a vehicle registration fee that we collect every year from our registered vehicles in our county. And this is to be used for the call box program as well as the freeway service patrol, as well as some other things such as reducing single occupancy vehicles in promoting carpooling, vanpooling, and whatnot. So we have $818,000 in revenue. And I think the next slide will talk about expenses. And we have 818 in expenses. The majority of that is our professional services, as you can see. Did you have a question?
I was just curious. $818,000 to take care of call boxes seemed to be a bit much, but I see that you've got the expenses all laid out there. So I was wondering if there was any surpluses that were not being used that could be used somewhere else.
Yes. This is a very good question. In my previous employer, we did go through this process of looking at the call box program and trying to identify more productive uses of this fund and potentially eliminating some call boxes and using those funds in other areas. So I recommend, it's not included in this work program, but at least next year, the next fiscal year, is when we are required to upgrade our call boxes, that we do an assessment of usage. And while some corridors may get fairly consistent usage, such in the rural areas, the ones in the urban areas are not. Those phones are basically obsolete because people are using their cell phones. So I would recommend a full assessment of the SAFE program and where we can use our monies more productively. So this one's kind of on the back burner because we have a lot of things going on in our agency at this point in time. But this is definitely on my radar screen because I did it in Merced, and I'd like to look at the issue again here. Okay. Traffic Solutions, this is our promoting carpooling, vanpooling, transit usage. We have almost $500,000 dedicated to this. And this is our expenditures. About over half of that, or about half of that, is professional services as well. And our Clean Air Express revenue. This is a new budget line item for us since we took over management of this. I thought it was very important that we keep it separate from our general fund because it's a fairly substantial dollar amount as well. So $2.4 million, almost $2.5 million for the Clean Air Express. And I'm pretty proud of the 36% from the fare box revenue. That's outstanding. Normal transit operators get about 20%, and so we're well above that. Again, here, look at the direct expenses. The majority of the funds are used for our contracted service operator as well as other miscellaneous things. We do, go back a little bit. We do have an asset transfer from AVTA. What was that? Anybody? Antelope Valley Transit Agency. We are looking at purchasing their used buses. They're converting to an electric fleet. So they have 17 buses. And this was, I think I mentioned this at your last board meeting, we're getting 17 buses for the price of one, so that we put it in this budget so we can take advantage of that opportunity. And this is our capital program for the Measure A program, and this is the majority of our budget, $16 million. It's quite a lot of funds. Almost 80% of that is from the Measure A revenues that we see. And these are our expenditures. And again, it's mostly direct cost of on projects, getting things done, implementing, commuter rail, all the things that you have listed there is what we intend to spend our Measure A dollars in fulfilling our promises to the voters and getting things done throughout our county. So overall, in our Measure A program, we have sufficient revenue to meet our expenses. The revenue continues to be stable. We do have a consultant, HDL, monitoring our revenues and making sure that we're on track. So it's basically a 1% to 2% increase, but it's at least it's not going down. When sales tax go down, that's when we start getting nervous. We are projected to end our year with a balance of $800,000, so that's a good thing, and we hope to have this adopted in April. Have any questions for us?
Yeah, any questions? And Director Clark, just chime in. We don't have a light here for you, so if you have something, please just shout out.
Now we can see you.
Shout.
I have a question if
Sure.
Director Clark does not.
I do.
Oh, why don't you go, Al? You have seniority. You are the ranking South Coast member.
Thank you. No, I was just curious. I realize it's not part of the budget, but I was wondering what our balance was in the Measure A fund.
Say that again.
I was wondering what our balance was in the Measure A fund, or do we have such a thing?
Yeah, Martha will answer.
We actually do, and currently, as of the end of February, when we reconciled it, it was about $24 million in the regional pot of money that SBCAG manages.
Thank you.
Director Williams?
Well, I guess that is also a helpful answer to my question as well. At our last meeting, we had some businesses from Coast Village kind of highlight the crisis that our economy is facing as the paralysis that 101 congestion creates for our businesses has gotten worse since the 19 debris flow with the closure of 192 and the request by those Coast Village road folks to look at speeding up the parallel projects. In your work plan, there's money for that, but it looks to be in the amount for that I would guess is design work.
Yes.
And if you looked at it and funding became available, or if this design work was done, would not including it in the work plan preclude you from moving forward on those parallel projects?
Absolutely not. We would take it back to the board and we'd get a budget amendment and add those things if the board wanted us to do that and we had the funds available to do so. So, and really the local jurisdictions that are on the leads of those projects, we rely on them to tell us what their needs are.
Yes, obviously I would want us to get our county ducks in order before we came to you.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Last chance.
Okay.
So this is just receive,
Yes.
And so we don't need any action,
Nope.
no vote? Okay.
Nope. Thank you.
Thank you. Turning to item 6, would you read that into the record, Ms. Contreras?
Item 6, Highway 246 passing lanes. 6A, receive an update on the construction of the Highway 246 passing lanes highway project and the plan for implementing the landscaping contract. 6B, authorize the executive director to sign a letter providing concurrence to anticipated cost increases for construction support as part of the landscaping and mitigation planting contract to be funded by SBCAG's shares from the State Transportation Improvement Program.
Mr. Luna.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Chair Hartman and directors. So the item before you is about our Highway 246 passing lanes project. It's one of our more significant projects in the North County sub-program of Measure A. Specifically, the action that we're asking is to have the board recommend signature and sending of a letter to Caltrans for concurrence of an increase in funding for the next phase of post-construction landscaping. As Director Kern had mentioned in the previous item, we're nearing completion of that project. We should have that complete by early June, and we would be planning for a ribbon cutting event for that project, but there are still things that need to get done on that project, including a landscaping contract. Right now we're in partnership with Caltrans for them to finish up construction work on that project, and then they will also be managing the mitigation planting is what we're calling it, and the monitoring period that goes on for a number of years after that. The request also indicates that there's a need for Measure A funds for that next phase of approximately $94,000. That would come back to the board next month per staff's plan via a cooperative agreement amendment at the April board meeting for the board's consideration. Approximately a year ago, several of you probably remember, we had a lengthy item where we discussed an increase in costs on this project to complete the project through the construction phase. And I'm happy to report today that we have gone through the winter season. As we had indicated, we were able to finish a majority of the project to shore up the work. And if you've driven through the area recently, it's been paved out to its full width. They still need to do a final lift of paving and then do the final striping and signage and other traffic shifts to open it for traffic on that. And like I mentioned previously, we're anticipating, weather permitting, early June for opening the project. At that point in time, you know, we will be able to deliver to the public the eastbound and westbound passing lanes, which are a significant part of this project, the channelization improvements, the improved drainage features, and safety improvements in this area at Tularosa Road, which we were, Caltrans and SBCAG are correcting a profile to adjust and improve the sight distance at that intersection. So specifically regarding the item and the request today related to the post-construction phase, the landscaping contract is intended to start later this year, and in order to do that and get a contractor on board to do that, Caltrans needs to get approval from the California Transportation Commission in May for what they expect are the funds that are going to be needed to implement that phase of the contract. And as I mentioned, that requires approval of an additional amount of Measure A funds, which we'll bring back to the board next month, and then the STIP fund estimate, which is looking to increase for the support costs related to that phase of the project of $210,000. So the proposal would be that those STIP funds would come from SBK's future share, and those are our gas tax funds that we get every 2 years. We get a county share, and so those would come off the top in the next cycle in 2020. And so they would just take that $210,000 of our share. This is similar to what was done in April when we approved an additional amount of STIP funds on this project. In order to take that action, Caltrans would like SBK's concurrence, and so we've drafted a letter for the board's consideration where we would send that to Caltrans indicating that we do concur with the increase of $210,000 to come off of future shares of our county gas tax share. And we would send that to Caltrans as our concurrence signed by our executive director. Overall, on the project, we are showing some positive aspects in the sense that we have different components such as right-of-way and then the highway construction. And so we're nearing completion of all the right-of-way, anticipated right-of-way expenditures. Originally, we entered into a co-op agreement with Caltrans in 2013 where we deposited $750,000 to allow for right-of-way expenses. And it looks like we will be able to get about $251,000 back in credits from that in Measure A funds. So in order to release those funds, we'll bring back an amendment to that particular agreement that we have with Caltrans next month as well. And then the last thing I'd just like to mention is that on the construction phase, it looks like things are going well, like I alluded to before, is that the money that's been authorized by this board is sufficient to complete the project at this point. And so we, in fact, the $1 million in Measure A funds, we don't anticipate using all that based on Caltrans's forecast. There could be a reduction of those costs up to about $137,000. And then there would also be a reduction in the gas tax funds that Caltrans is using for the support dollars. So in general, you know, the phases that we're nearing completion on, I think we have enough money, and it looks like we'll be getting some Measure A funds back in 2 of those phases. So in summary, I'd just like to remind the board that the action before them is to approve a letter to Caltrans that would concur with the increase in STIP funds, and for the executive director to sign. And I'd be happy to take any questions. We also have Paul Martinez, the project manager for Caltrans here, and he'd be happy to answer any more detailed questions about the project if the board does have those.
Director Clark, did you have any questions?
Thank you for asking. No, I don't.
Okay, I don't see any lights on up here. I did. Could you describe the bike lanes, how that will be striped?
Paul, do you know what the final resolution of that was on the?
Yes. Chair Hartman and directors, there will be no striping for bike lanes. It's a rural project. So what happens is the shoulders become the bike lanes. And the reason we do that, when we stripe bike lanes, we do it in more in an urban situation because there's a lot of driveways, a lot of intersecting components to the highway. Here they're pretty far apart, and so there's really not a lot of impact to bikes between those locations. So they'll use this shoulder, which is allowed statewide on state highways.
Okay, thank you. I mean, a lot of bikes use that.
Yes.
And you don't ever stripe in that situation? In
a rural situation, no. There's going to need to be some specific safety issue or something that would require that, but in this case, the shoulder's wide open for people to use. It's an 8-foot wide shoulder. Right now it's narrow because of the construction zone, but once the project is complete, they'll have 8-foot shoulders.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no more lights, do we have any public comment slips?
We have no public comment.
Okay, may I have a motion that we authorize our executive director to send this letter to Caltrans?
So moved.
Second.
And would you call the vote, Ms. Contreras?
Director Williams?
Aye.
Richardson?
Aye.
Lizaldi?
Aye.
Mosby?
Aye.
Bennett?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Murillo?
Aye.
Waterfield?
Aye.
Andrezek?
Aye.
And Chair Hartman.
Aye.
Motion passes 10-0.
Okay, turning to our 1-minute reports. Director Williams.
I know I usually have skipped this, but there's two real significant items. One was we appreciated Caltrans coming down to Carpinteria in a Chevy Volt, so they weren't using a high number of carbon emissions, to sort of go over the quandaries about the Arroyo Parida Bridge. This is one of the 7 192 bridges that are out and that are threatening to choke off commerce in the South County. The purpose of the meeting was to forestall conflict between Caltrans and the surrounding neighborhood. And I think with the agreement of, so the quandary they had was the size of the bridge was determined by a driveway nearby. So subsequent to that, I went to the property owner and asked him if he would move his driveway. And he agreed. So now Caltrans could do a smaller footing that might prevent litigation from the residents, and hopefully will mean that we can build the bridge faster and get South County moving again. We also had that meeting that was on Tuesday that was alluded to by staff with local employers. I'm glad that it was well received because I was pretty doom and gloom. I really do think that South County employers are going to have to radically have to think way out of the box in terms of hours of operation, in terms of other traffic solutions, because businesses are definitely going under in the Upper Village and in the city of Santa Barbara at a pace that is disturbing for all of us, and it obviously has something to do with the disasters and may have something to do with commute patterns, and the more that we can alleviate it by thinking of collective solutions, including the train, alternative hours, and mass transit, the better.
Yes, Director Murillo.
Thank you so much. I'd like to report on Coast Village Road, and Director Williams, chime in because I know you're keeping an eye on that area too. The city of Santa Barbara, to alleviate the traffic congestion, did a couple of things. Made a couple of the cross streets four-way stops, and they're temporary, but people like them so much they're asking to make them permanent, and we'll see if our planners can do that. And second, we put barriers where that parking lane is, where people like to go around the traffic and cut through where the parking is, and apparently that's been successful. I need to talk to the Coast Village Road people because they keep an eye on things really carefully, so we'll see. And then I also heard that the congestion was so bad, and now it's not so bad. So maybe people were looky-looing, and I guess it remains to be seen why was so much traffic going through there, but it's diminished according to our transportation planners. So again, I need to check with the Coast Village Road people. Is that true? Is the congestion better? And I like to check with the MTD bus drivers because they're right there and they know everything. And so I might just take a little bus trip and ask them and find out what's going on Coast Village Road. So thanks. That's my report.
And Director Williams.
Oh, I just want to thank Mayor Murillo for those moves. I think there's some people that don't like them, but the vast majority of Montecito residents think it's an improvement. The business owners that have spoken to me believe that it's helped. I don't think all of us believe that traffic counts are down, but the very fact that there's less conflicts and less people trying to go around may have improved the situation in and of itself. And there may be, the rain also tends to improve traffic counts in our area because of a variety of reasons.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, I just wanted to say that in my 1-minute report that Director Bennett and I accompanied Executive Director Kern back and Mr. Hart back to Washington, D.C. It was an extremely well organized, the whole thing from start to finish was extremely well organized. I think Ms. Contreras had a lot to do with that. It wasn't easy getting our train trips and schedules to correlate. And the lobbyist, Don Gilchrist, did a super job in working with our executive director and creating the materials. So thank you so much for that. Director Bennett, did you have anything you wanted to add? You were a great lobbyist.
Well, the point I would make is this year was different than last, and I felt like we had some success with staff in that they had a better feeling of where we were going and going forward. Last year was, from my perspective, having been my second time there, was a bit of a disappointment because we weren't getting that kind of feeling and we weren't getting that kind of input. But this year there seemed to be some confidence on some things going forward. And certainly with the infrastructure proposals coming out of the administration, and of course Congress having their own approach as to how they're going to deal with that. But nonetheless, it appears things are going to move forward, maybe not quickly, maybe not this year, but certainly it looks like as we go forward into next year, 19, that we might look forward to some real support and compliments on what's going on in our communities.
So turning to item number 8 in our executive director's report.
Excuse me.
Oh, sorry, I missed your light.
I just had a quick question. I know the mills of the bureaucracies grind slowly, but I was wondering if you had any feedback on the 246 grant request. Any kind of a feeling on how that's going?
Oh, the planning study.
Yeah.
No.
No, thank you.
We haven't heard anything.
Just wanted to keep that kind of high on everybody's.
I think they're reviewing the applications now. We submitted our application, so I expect to hear positive response to that because
you're feeling positive.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So, Madam Chairperson, members of the board, I think it's a really good reflection of our how meshed we are when the board members are basically giving the executive director's report. My first thing on my list was our lobbying delegation and I want to thank board members Hartman and Bennett for attending and enduring and being such good sports and being great spokespersons for our region and advocating on our behalf for the lane and the train and indulging me when I made us all take our photo ops because we had to do several locations because, the lighting wasn't quite right. So thank you so much for your being a great sport and making that trip just excellent. You make it very easy to have those trips, and I appreciate your willingness to do so. And then the other thing on my list was the Traffic Solutions hosting the employer meeting last Tuesday. Thank you again, DOS, for speaking, and thank you, Michael Bennett, for attending. I think we had 50, 60, 70, I was trying to count, but, great attendance. DOS had to leave early because he had a board meeting to go to, but the questions at the end I think that lasted a good half hour. It was just the engagement of the participants. They were, how can we help, what can we do, and the specific questions they had. Traffic Solutions did an excellent job in engaging the employers, and we received requests for follow-up presentations at the employers' locations, so it's working. The marketing, the outreach that we're doing, getting the attention. We have over 1,000 folks signed up that said they were interested in this train. So we have 500 seats. So we'll see how this works. We might have capacity problems, which would be a great problem to have. And last but not least, I've been invited to speak at the CalCog conference, so I'm on my way to Monterey as soon as we're done with this meeting to talk about the disasters that we had in our area and how we respond and how we can prepare better in the future, because these things seem to keep on happening and we need to be better prepared when they do. So on that note, my last thing, thank you so much for approving my contract extension.
Thank you for accepting. Okay, any questions of our executive director, and starting with Director Clark? Apparently not. From South County, I see no lights. I just wanted to add that, and this leads into our next item, that as we did go from office to office, part of our narrative was indeed the disasters, the mud flow, how well Caltrans performed in clearing 101, how significant the train was. And so we had your presentation from last time that Margie was able to pull up, and that it lodged the story very visually and very compellingly in everyone's mind. So we were very appreciative to that. So,
you ready for the district director's report? Okay. Chair Hartman, members of the board, I'm Scott Eads. I'm the Santa Barbara 101 corridor manager, standing in today for the district director. I have a few personnel changes to discuss first, and then a couple announcements. First, we have a new Caltrans director at headquarters. This is the new director is Lori Berman. She previously was the acting chief deputy director just for the last few months. Prior to that, she was the District 11 district director, and she's been appointed by the governor in a permanent role. So she is the new director for Caltrans. Many of you knew Malcolm Doherty. He has left state service now, and we wish him the best.
Where is District 11?
It is in San Diego.
Thank you.
And then we also have a new chief deputy director. That is also a permanent appointment of Ryan Chamberlain. He was previously the District 12 director, which is in Orange County, and he is in a permanent role, appointed by the director for that. By the governor for that position. And then that has had a ripple effect locally within District 5 in that Tim Gubbins, our district director, has been asked to act in an acting role down in District 11 in San Diego for the new Caltrans director. So he's going to be down there for a few months while they look for a replacement for the district director down there. In the interim, we have the single focal point, Richard Rosales, who is the deputy director was the district deputy director for program and project management. So he's filling in for Tim while Tim's out, and he's going to do a great job, but we certainly look forward to Tim coming back, and we understand that will be the case. A few things to announce. First is that we have our first Senate Bill 1 project that has been completed within District 5, and that is the project that some of you noticed recently, and that's in Buellton. There was a $4 million project to replace slabs on 101, and that project is now complete. There's information posted on this project as well as many others that are identified as SB1 projects on Rebuilding California or rebuildingca.ca.gov. So more and more, you'll see more information on projects there. If you're interested, there's a lot of good information about not only that project, but upcoming projects that are programmed throughout the state. So there's a good map, and you can dial right into the projects that are coming up. Also, just wanted to highlight that Director Kern had mentioned the congested corridors application process. We've talked about that here in the past as well. I don't know if you all are aware of the fact that we did go through a vetting process within Caltrans to identify priorities for projects that Caltrans would either be submitting solely or be a joint applicant with other agencies. And of that list, our congested corridors application was identified as number 2 priority within all of Caltrans, which is quite impressive. I think it shows the quality of the work, and we're excited about that. Of course, Caltrans is not making the decision on that program. The California Transportation Commission is, and we're looking for staff reports from the CTC staff in late April, and then action by the CTC in May. And we remain hopeful that we're going to be successful there. And then just also want to note there's a few other things out for public review. The first is a statewide intercity bus study report that Caltrans has issued. Comments are due on March 26, 2018. See me if you would like information on where to find that online. And then there's a high-speed rail authority. They have a draft 2018 business plan that's also been released. Comments are due on that on May 7th, 2018. That's on the high-speed rail website. And finally, just want to highlight that the ATP program, Cycle 4, which is the Active Transportation Program, is coming up. The CTC is intending to adopt the guidelines on May 16th at their May meeting. And then the call for projects is scheduled essentially on the same day, with applications due in late July, July 31st. So look for that in the coming months. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay. And Director Clark?
Was that
Oh,
Clark?
did you have any questions?
I do.
Please go ahead.
May I? Thank you. This is admittedly minor compared to the points raised during Director Williams' 1-minute talk. But I have a number of constituents who are concerned. Since the bottleneck on the 101 is now located in Carpinteria, the app on your telephone says that you can use Carpinteria Avenue as the third lane. And so we have a lot of traffic, especially during rush hour in the morning and the evening at that time. The other day, I didn't witness this myself, but these are constituent reports that this was extremely exacerbated by Caltrans bush trimming party out on 101, and had a lot of my constituents frustrated and scratching their head whether this was emergency bush trimming or perhaps there was a more opportune time to have done this other than rush hour. Thank you.
Mr. Eads, go ahead.
Okay. Director Clark, I'm not familiar with the specific incident. In terms of the apps, obviously those are not Caltrans apps. We can't control where the traffic goes. But in terms of the activities that we use for maintenance, we do try to do those in off-peak periods. I'm not sure of the circumstances here, but I'll follow up with our maintenance folks and talk to them about that. We certainly don't want to exacerbate what's already a challenging area. And then I'd also just highlight that there is a lot of work ongoing in terms of improving 101. Ultimately, that's our solution here, is to provide long-term congestion relief. And the Carpinteria area is our first focus in terms of construction in the corridor, assuming we get the SB1 funds we're requesting.
Director Clark, is your mic still on?
Yes, thank you for your response.
Pleasure.
Okay, and if you would turn your mic off now, I think we get a little feedback there. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, Director Richardson.
I just wanted to find out where on Caltrans Horizon the Alamo Pintado Bridge on 246 is currently. There was a discussion of replacing that bridge and that sort of thing. Has that priority changed to sooner rather than later?
Yes. Well, I should say there's project development efforts ongoing with that one, with the goal of replacing the bridge, and the specific timing for that I do not have. But I can follow up with you on that.
I'd appreciate that. We were hoping that there would be some encouragement for you to accelerate the project.
Yeah, I know they're working to try to address it because it is structurally deficient, and we have been given notice by our structural folks that it does need to be removed, and our goal is to replace it.
Thank you.
Yes, of course, Director Murillo.
Thanks. Mr. Eads, how unusual is it for a regional director to go to another one? I'm not sure if I should be concerned about your boss being assigned somewhere for a little while, or you have a lot of deputies, it's going to be okay. How often does that happen where someone goes somewhere else?
It actually happens a fair amount.
Oh, okay.
It's an opportunity for cross-training for somebody at that level. There's some pretty interesting stuff happening down in San Diego. They actually have the North Coast I-5 corridor, which they have a similar corridor management strategy where they work very closely with Sandag down there. So I think in our case, we stand to gain from the experience here, and we certainly look forward to Tim coming back, and our understanding is that will be the case, that it's just for a short period of time. I also understand the ad to post that position is already been prepared and will be posted very soon. So we're hopeful that that process will move forward quickly and will get him back in the district. So.
Well, I would rely on Ms. Kern and our SPCAG staff to keep an eye on that. What does that mean to us, right? That there's some changes at that level at Caltrans. Yeah. Thank you.
And Mr. East, would you talk a little more about the intercity bus report and where we can find that and what the purpose is? And
yes. So there's a few bullet points I have here. Supposedly the study provides an objective evaluation of the existing rural intercity bus network along with system changes during the past decade, and it provides an in-depth analysis, finding and recommendations on how to meet the state's future easy for me to say, regional intercity bus needs. And then there's also information on promoting partnerships, encouraging cross-jurisdictional coordination, and ensuring efficient and effective connectivity for a more sustainable transit network. It can be found. There's also, I guess, a scoring criteria that's proposed for rural areas. I'll read the website. It's a bit long, but I'll just attempt. It's pacificbpr.org.
Could you maybe send it to all of us?
Absolutely.
And yeah. Then is there an opportunity for public comment on this?
There is.
Okay.
There is, and the comments are due on Monday, March 26th of this year.
Okay, so we could get that information.
Yeah,
perfect.
Absolutely.
I see no more lights up here, so thank you so much for being here, Mr. East. We really appreciate it. Turning then to committee meetings. And Director Bennett Losan.
Well, real short, the most important item, and I think we're very familiar with it by now, is the Pacific Surfliner peak hour service to Santa Barbara, actually Carpinteria, Santa Barbara, and Goleta for the traffic reduction on Highway 101. As indicated by others, the response has been rather overwhelming. I'm optimistic that if we, and I have reason to believe, that if we exceed the 500 seats, and that's with people seated as opposed to standing, that we can work towards adding an additional car or two, as we did during the flood crisis. So I'm optimistic that we'll be able to handle whatever we get going on this particular route. And again, as previously mentioned, the folks are responding in a very, very positive way. And I'm incredibly optimistic that we're going to show that people would much prefer to ride the train. And keep in mind, this comes out of Union Station, LA at about 4:09 a.m. Not thinking there's going to be many people at 4:09 a.m. in the morning coming out of Los Angeles, but it does move all the way up the corridor, so it will be picking people up. And we know for a fact that during the floods, the train was picking people up coming north to us. Really at Moore Park is where they started, from Moore Park to Camarillo to Oxnard to Ventura. And certainly Carpinteria had a great contingent. So we have every reason to believe that the train is going to be well populated and well received. And we've got some flexibility on time, certainly on the return trips. And also, as a reminder to everyone, the train pass that you receive will be good to use on MTD, so you can get to work in the morning, because we're providing transportation for the last mile, and both in Santa Barbara and in Goleta. And in addition to that, the schedule is such that the return trips from the train, and we have two, one at 4:24 and one at about 6:40 in the evening. The Coastal Express will also be available, so you can use your pass, which will be accepted there. So you can use the Coastal Express. So those are all important pieces of information that all the employees need. And then there's also the emergency program with Traffic Solutions, so that if someone has an emergency at home, they need only make contact, and this information is passed out. And they will be provided the means of transportation to get back home in Ventura County if such an emergency exists. So I think the program's incredibly robust. During the hearing in Los Angeles, there were a couple of folks who expressed concerns. I'll leave it at that. So unlike where we in the South Coast, everybody seems to have their arms around this and is real excited about it. That's not universal when you go elsewhere. So I just make mention of that. We emphasize it's a 2-year pilot program. And in the course of that 2-year pilot program, we know that we're going to learn a lot. We like to think that we've answered all the questions, but anybody knows when you're doing a pilot program like this that hasn't been done before, we're going to learn more. And we'll be doing our best to respond to make any corrections that are necessary to make the service even better. So I'll leave you with that, and it's been a real pleasure to serve as the Lausanne representative.
Director Williams.
And can I give, just in case there's actually someone paying attention, a great suggestion if you have a hard time with that last mile is something that I do. And Al, you can do this too. I typically when I take the train, I drive in on Wednesday, and then or Thursday, leave the car there, go back on the train, and then take the train the next morning, because parking in the Goleta station is free, and parking in the Santa Barbara station, thanks to the city of Santa Barbara, is only $5 overnight for train customers. So if you're just petrified of the last mile, that's another way you can wean yourself off that anxiety.
All right. Director Richardson.
Caltrans report. Surplus vehicles are being auctioned off. And also farm worker funding for vans. Staff has received an RFP from CARB for $3 million for last fiscal year, and $3 million from this fiscal year to purchase vans, and they expect to purchase a couple of hundred vans from this $6 million worth of funding. We've approved 2 new agencies into CalVans, the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority and the Stanislaus Council of Governments have submitted letters requesting membership in CalVans. And they've awarded a vehicle, 24 GMC Chevrolet vans, to one particular dealer that has been successfully bidding on these vans. 2 years ago, they had 3 bidders. Last year, they had 2 bidders. This year, they had the single bidder. And the average price of these vans, including electrical conversion to allow them to run on battery or gas, are just around $30,000 a piece. So the bids are separated by like $95 difference between all these various dealers that are bidding. So that's basically was the upshot of our meeting. That's it.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Turning then to item number 11, communications.
If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
And Director Richardson, I think your light's still on, but that's just a
sorry.
holdover, I guess. And Director Clark, just checking in for a last word from you. All right. I think we've completed
If I say no, I guess that's my last word.
All right. So I don't think we have anything else on our agenda. We're ready to adjourn until April 19th, and that will be here in Santa Maria. So take note of that. It's not in Santa Barbara. All right. Have a good month.